Well, hello and welcome to today's show. Today I'm feeling cute. Might reconfigure every hard drive in this beast. Might mess it up and do irreparable damage. We're going to find out. Alrighty, what we've got going on here is we've got a highly technical plan here. I know it's not much, but you know you don't want to skip anything. So we've got 6 drives in the beast, plus we have our external that we just did a little bit of a review on. We're using it to back the RAID up because we're going to reconfigure the RAID. We need to make sure we have a copy of that. We have a sacrificial drive here, and according to what it says on it, it says the clone of the Win 10 on the new board C and D drives, September 2024. Now this particular video probably won't air till about the first week in September anyway, but we're in June right now and we're working ahead. We've got our laptop that we use to do our screen capture with so that we can free up the machine, run one file through the multiple reboots, because we're going to start with Windows, check the backup to make sure that it is up to date, and then we're going to go from there. Now the goal is to get Linux on the Gen 5 drive, so it'll be faster. And of course that means we'll deprecate the Win 11 down to a Gen 4 drive because we only have one Gen 5 drive. So we'll take it off and put it down. But to do that rolling around stuff, you're going to need a lot of stuff. So we got 6 here. We've got 7, 8, and if we use our thumb drive that we have as the individual boot for doing the cloning with, this is Hiren's boot CD. You can find a video, multiple videos all over YouTube on how to construct one of those. You're on your own. You know, I don't recommend or whatever these, but I trusted it and I haven't had much trouble, and I use this on every time I need to do an image on the drive. But remember, when we get into the Linux, this is not going to work. We have to do things the Linux way. All right, so what do you say we get started? Well, this is a very long show, and yes, there was some bad things that happened, and you need to watch the whole show to see what disaster hit us and what we did with it. Now, I want to bring about this Hiren's boot CD. It's a project. You can download it. You know, you can do whatever you want to. I'm not really associating this with anything. I'm not advocating for this. It's a on your own type situation. But the way Windows often works, it's hard to clone your system drive into another drive. And that's kind of what we're going to do here. We're moving from a huge drive, a 4 terabyte Gen 5 drive, over to a smaller drive, and then taking the smaller drive that we had that we were running Linux on, you know, Linux Mint right here, what we got going on, and put it on the Gen 5 drive, and we are playing rotating around. There's a lot of stuff here. But what this little project here does, somebody decided to work on this after it had been old. It's probably like 2008, like the great financial situation, the disaster that happened in 2008 when it was coming around here. They've put together a collection of tools that are very handy, utilities. As far as I know, there's nothing stolen in on it or anything bad like that. It's freebies. Some of it's a little dated, some of it's a little challenging. Sometimes it works. It's right there. It has quite a bit of tools. I basically use it when I need to clone a hard drive. So we're going to go through this. If you'll stick with it, you'll find out what went terribly wrong, and you'll get to see a couple of different demonstrations of this. So that's that. Now, when it gets down to Linux, you know, Linux isn't like Windows. You can actually run the clone off the system that's running at the time you're cloning, and at the end of it, it'll just synchronize itself. It'll sync itself, but not with Windows. Windows, you need to start the computer with a different operating system so that you're not running off of the hard drive that you are cloning. And even then, it can sometimes fail. So we're going to get started on this. I just want you to look at this. You can work this project of your own. I have a customized version. It's been around for a while. Over here, I put some programs into the utilities, but yeah, it boots. it boots off of a USB and we work from it from there. Well, according to the official envelope over there, our number one job, once we've got our drive installed, before we repartition and image and do anything of this nature back and forth, first thing we got to do is protect our data. And since we're going to mess with the operating system that runs the RAID, because it's only Windows 11 is the only one that can run those 3 drives, that almost 4 terabytes of data, 3 terabytes, whatever it is, we're going to run a backup just to make sure we get caught up. And let's go ahead and bring that into focus. All right, this is what our desktop looks like. Let me show you something that we got going on. This is a little program over here that you can get for Windows, and it also runs on Linux as well. If we click this, and I get the correct speed on my clicking, it'll pop up. Now what this guy is it's called the quick sync settings is what I've got it set up for, because I have, did this last night, by the way. This is just the few things where I'll do the videos and the hardware setups, 3 directories. I have a full sync, which will do the entire drive, I, which is the RAID, all the way to G, which is the W Winchester Blue. Let's see if we can pull that up. We can see that in there. Yeah, see the Winchester Blue, which is this guy right here. There it is. That's what we're going to back up from the RAID, I, to this. We'll go ahead and close this off. You can get this program. It's called Free File Sync. I'm going to run a quick sync because there's really nothing to do. I guess I can do the full version of it because, quite honestly, I don't think anything has changed since last night when I just tested this in the dry run through. See, start synchronization. It says we have 0 to 0. All right, let's do it. 2A. There's nothing to do. We're caught up. Well, what this little utility of this little program does, and again, its name is, we go over here, Free File Sync. There is one that will do real-time sync, but we're not going to get into that. We're not going to, if we crash the computer, we may crash one of the operating systems or something, but we've got it on our drive, and I'm going to put it on this little shelf right here. So that's our first task that we have done. All right, now task 2 is going to be using our Hiren's boot CD. Now this is just a little thumb drive, a bootable thumb drive with some utilities on it that somebody's already collected for us, save us the trouble. You can build one of these yourself, but what we'll do is we don't want to try to image a hard drive that's running. So what we'll do is we'll boot it off the thumb drive and then use any of the partition tools and imaging and clone tools that we have on the drive. We'll pick one that works and we'll use that to clone the Windows 11 Professional we have right now on the 705, the Crucial 705 Gen 5, the high-speed drive, and we're going to get a copy of that onto the old Toshiba drive, which is going to require some shrinking of partitions to get it to fit, because the Toshiba drive is only 1 terabyte and the Gen 5 drive is 4. So we're going to have to shrink our partitions on C and D first, then make the copy over onto the spinny disk. Then we'll reboot, see that it actually does work at that stage with that on it. And once we got Windows running on the backup drive, we can go ahead and work on moving the Linux over to the faster drive. Does that make sense? All right, let's go do it. Now, here we have, I don't know, does my mouse work on this? Yes. Okay, this very top one, that's our 705, that's the 4 terabyte. Then with this one is the Corsair, that was the free drive that I got with the CPU. That's Windows 10. Then we have the Ubuntu or the Linux Mint right there, and this is our Hiren's boot CD. So we'll click that, and once we come up, we'll see you in just a second. Well, now that we've got Hiren's up, we'll take a look at what we've got going on. Let's go ahead and look at utilities. Now this has been modified. I've added some other stuff in here on this particular drive for my personal use, but yours will be similar if you get a project off the internet from someone you trust. Remember, if you get anything off the internet and it's not good and you ruin something, don't blame me, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at, I think, hard disk tools. We're going to bring that up. And we have two different things. We have cloning, which they have under imaging, or we have partition tools, which we have under partitioning. Now, normally you can't partition to, you can't go from a larger drive to a smaller drive because it won't fit, even if you have a bunch of empty space. So one of the things one approach is that you actually take the system and shrink the partitions on the drives that your bigger one, and then clone that over to the smaller drive, and it works that way. And then when you get finished, you just expand the partitions out. Some software will let you do only basically what's on the drive, so you can do the partitions the size they want it. I think if we go back up to imaging, I think this one, Image and Clone, LazySoft will do that as well. Macrium Reflect may do that. Anyway, it's just going to be a trial and error. I don't use these enough. I don't clone enough drives on a daily basis to remember them exactly. But what we're going to do is we're going to try this and get it going. Well, we've pulled a DiskGenius up, as you can see. This is one of the utilities. It is one of the free versions. Everything on there should be legitimate, although a few of these programs will offer you the ability to buy a new program, an actual full-fledged program. It's up to you what you want to use. You can purchase something or you can use the basics. If you're only going to use it once or twice, it's not a big deal. Now, as we see here, hard disk 0, the way this booted this time, Toshiba, that's our destination disk. That's the only spinny disk that we have. And this one right here that says it is the 705. See how I know it sounds really goofy and some people may not like, but when I do a drive and I set up a partition, I do like to put the actual drive model in the name so that the various softwares will help me identify the correct drive and I don't accidentally use a destination to clone to the source I'm trying to save and do it backwards and screw up. But anyway, here what we see with the oranges, these little orange little spots right here, if the machine will show it, when I go back to producing the video, these are the RAIDs. They also tell me that they're the RAIDs because they say they're the 770s, 2 terabytes. And down here on the bottom it says we're using this Microsoft storage space. That's a soft RAID. That's down here. That is the controller that runs those 3 drives together. Now, this is our Corsair Win 10, this is our Win 11, and in here somewhere, it may or may not show this one that says BootX happens to be a different file system that the Windows can't read because it's the Linux system. We'll get that when we talk about gparted and disk defiler. All right, so we're going to put it here on this drive number 1, which is the CT705. And you see, all this is fairly small on this side. I only have a 423.9 gigabyte operating system partition, but I have a huge data partition. So we're going to have to resize this partition. So what we're going to do is we're going to stay away from our Windows partition and our boot and recovery. I guess one of them is the safety job, but we're going to click it over here into this one where our data is, and we don't have that much data on it. We're all backed up. We're going to come down here and say, there it is, resize partition. And I think we can just grab this right here and shrink it all the way down. And since I have 4, let's get this to about 227 or so, because the 227 and the 4 all of this together is going to be less than the 1 terabyte on the Toshiba that we're going to, that one right there. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to cross our fingers that we're not smoking cloves or some other substance today. To avoid data loss, please ensure the following matters. All right, back up. We've already done that. There are no bad sectors. I don't know about that. We can scan it, but it's a new drive, so I think it's okay. Ensure power supply do not get turned off on the computer. It's recommended to close all other applications. I think we're good there. Let's hit the yes button. Are you sure you want to resize this partition? It's the D drive, 705, yes. All right. Now it's going to do its magic. Once we have this small enough, all the active partitions small enough that they'll fit on the Toshiba, the spinny drive, we should be able to just overwrite that disk. All right, we need to tell it to complete. And we can step out of this program into a different program to do the cloning with, or we can clone with this one, but let's go try a different program just for the kicks and giggles to see if the other program did in fact see that we get this committed. Sometimes you don't commit them and you make the changes, but until you hit the final yes, go ahead and make the changes, they don't always take because you forget that step. Now these cloning softwares don't always work. So we're going to just pick one. I think I've used Macrium or Reflect a number of times. I've used LazySoft or LaySoft. This one has failed a couple of times on me. It comes up with it can't write the master boot record, and then I've had some startup troubles with that. But it's easy to work with. I've used Aomi Backupper. Nice name, isn't it? Never used Acronis. That's a respected name, though. And I've never used disk drive image, either one, because if it works, it works. So let's go ahead and try the Macrium Reflect, and we'll hope that this gives us a bootable drive on that Toshiba. All right, well, we're up. And what we want to do is we want to move it off of Restore to Backup tab. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to pick our system up, and it's going to ask us to pick the drive that we want to clone. It's going to start with the very first one on the list, but that's not the one we want. That's our destination. What we want to do is get this one right here. So we just highlight it, and when we move the highlight down here, it automatically says clone this disk or image this disk, and we want to clone it. We don't want to just hold a backup image. All right, it's going to say, what do we want to do? We want to grab all of these active partitions, and now we've got 3 terabytes not used. This is how we're going to do it on a smaller drive. And then this does say, and you make darn sure you get the right source and the right destination. So this does say, and again, I reiterate my nerddom, this is the Crucial disk, the 4 terabyte T705, and we know we got the right drive because I only have 2 4 terabyte drives, and one of them is the Win Blue, and it's not even plugged in right now. So we're going to go down to the destination, and our destination that we're going to go, I should call it, our destination is going to be this one that we call the Toshiba. You just saw us mount it, so we're going to pick that one. All right. And it's going to say, hey, dude, there's some stuff on this computer. You don't want to do this. If you don't want to do this, just drive. We're going to have to write over it. Yeah, I'm going to have to delete the existing partition. I'm going to have to come over here, delete that partition. It's just gone. If I screwed up and got the wrong drive when I did this, as far as I know, it's just gone. Once you delete, you may go into the partition table, but that's and try to reconstruct it, but I'm not smart enough to do that. All right, so I'm going to hit next, and it's going to give me a choice again just to confirm it. We want to go from this disk up here, the 705, and we want to go this 1, 2, 3 partitions. There should be a 4th one there. Yes, a 4th one to the Toshiba, which will probably get renamed, and we'll have to fix that when we're done. All right, are we convinced? All right, cross your little fingers. All right, all on the target. See what it's doing? It's going to the Toshiba. It is giving us a chance, but it's a little too late because I already deleted the partition. Continue, and now we'll see you when the process is done, because this will take a little bit of a time to do it. These things do flash up, but we can make them go away because there's the process is actually underneath them. We'll scan it. We may need to do some renaming on the drive because it probably will be saying on the Toshiba that we have 705, and we're going to have to fix that. Well, did you see it? I've already made a major mistake. And no matter how hard we plan, we've already made a major mistake. And the mistake is, if you look up here, the Toshiba isn't a 1 terabyte, it's a 2 terabyte. And I had forgotten about that. The big deal is, as long as it's big enough to catch what we're taking off of the drive, the actual data off of the drive, we're in good shape. And as this wraps up the first cloning that we're going to do, I happen to notice I may have made another mistake. Look at this up here. Let me go ahead and shut this down. Right? We have our basic 16 meg process. Okay, this was the one we're gonna jump into for the BIOS looks into to know how to do the rest of it. But see, there's only 2 partitions on there, so this is not likely going to be C and D off the lower drive, unless, of course, I did something different. I can't remember, but it's obviously not what I thought it was. So hey, we're already ahead a little bit. We've discovered 2 mistakes in the first few minutes. All right, let's see if we can then save this out. We'll take a look at the partition, reload it again, and then see if we can't start the machine. It does say it was a success, that it fixed the drive, and the GPT, the boot CD, suggests success. I can't say suggest today, but it says it is a success, so it thinks it did right. Let's see if it's actually true. All right, we do have our suspiciously looking like image. We have 284, 284, we have 1616, 148, 148, 58, 58, and of course this is the spare room on top of the drive. So it should work. Let's find out if it does. We've got to back out of Hiren's, and we'll do the restart. We'll see what she does. Well, we are encouraged. Of course, something I want to draw your attention to is while we were rebooting, I moved my little circle camera over a little bit from the right side of the screen because, you never know, I might be cutting myself off in various whatever machines or whatever this video is viewed on. So I just moved that over. But we will notice this. You see there we have our original. This is we haven't messed with it except changed the partition size. We have the next one, that's the Win 10. This is, of course, the Linux. Here we have the Hiren boot CD, and we do have something new. Look, it's showing up as a SATA 3.1, and so there we are. Toshiba, we found it. So apparently I am on the 3rd input, which, looking at the main board, would be the green cable. All right, let's see if it boots. Now, if it boots, we know that we at least have not destroyed our copy of Windows 11, which is currently running and controlling our soft RAID, what they call it, Windows Storage Solutions. So let's hit that button. Well, it does look like we managed to boot on the Toshiba. Let's see if it did and it didn't have some sort of fallback. Looks good. Looks like we booted. Looks like our screen that we had just before we left. Oh, there goes. Driver has failed to load. This program will not. That's core temp, okay? That's all right. We'll go ahead and cancel that out. Well, let's go ahead and look to see that we are in fact running off the Toshiba. Okay, it says that 11 is the C, so it acts like it booted off of the old drive, but we may have to go back in there and look to see that we have now maybe different versions of it, you see. See what we got? We've got AC on WinPro 705. We had the WinPro 705G. You know what we didn't do? We didn't rename the partitions like I talked about doing. All right. I think it's because my nose was itching and I wanted to drink some coffee. Well, let's go see if we actually are running off the Toshiba or the other drive. So let's go ahead and pull that up and let's do partition. Okay, create partition. We're going to bring this up. We'll look in the Windows.
If you like this content, please go to calldelltocell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification.
Because we have 300, 300, 111, 111, 705, 705, but look at our unallocated portion. See, we only have, about 1.2 gigabytes instead of the 3 gigabytes that we have. I guess it'd be terabytes at this stage, wouldn't it? See, 1.2 terabyte and then 3 terabytes. So this is definitely the bigger one. And so we did start off the right drive. Now, what we can do is we can come up here and go to properties real quick before we forget. And we can just put copy, apply. Do the same thing for the other. We could put the Toshiba here. What Toshiba was it that we had? DT01A. That's a long name. I'm just going to leave copy on there, and that'll be good enough for government work for right now. So we did successfully boot. Let's go see if our RAID works. There's our Hirons. Okay. We're going to, since we started up all right, we're just going to now, we want to do one more thing just real quick before we go. Let's bring our system up and verify that we can actually read the RAID is there. So our RAID is still working off the soft controller, off the image that we have off the Toshiba. So that's a success. So now what we want to do is to reboot the system in Linux and make our image from the Linux drive onto the old Windows driver, the 705. We want to put it on from the Gen 4 to the Gen 5 drive. We want to move that over, and that's a little different process. Let's get to that. Well, while you weren't looking, I went ahead and pulled out the old Toshiba drive. I have to chastise myself because apparently it wasn't C&D from last year sometime. Apparently I did something else with it and I had forgotten about it and did change my label. But anyway, we've got that set up. We do have Linux running. We pulled it up. That's working just fine. Now we need to go in here and talk about doing the Linux side of things because we have some different formats that the hard drive is done in, and we need to pay attention to that. And of course, that's maybe why we have, let me see, have my note papers here on the hardware, because we want to make sure that we don't get the wrong NVMe when we do this. And of course, by actually pulling out my legitimate good running clone of my Windows 11, it's physically air gapped, so there's no way in the world I'm going to mess up my operating system, because I'm getting ready to move from the Gen 4 to the Gen 5, and that's where that Windows 11 lives. So that's why we need to be careful. Let's get to it. Well, here we are in Linux Mint, as you can tell by the emblem right there. Now, one of the things we're going to do is we can come down here and click on our software manager, and we can use something called Clonezilla. And it's there. If we were to use it, we can in fact do this. using the install button. But I think I'm going to do it from the terminal down here in the bottom. Let's bring that up. All right, got 2 copies of it, don't need but 1. So we're going to do it in the terminal. Now there are a couple of different ways that we can proceed. One of the ways that we can do is we can come down here to our software manager and use a program similar to what we used off of the little jump drive that we had set up our what is it, Hiren's boot CD that we used, where we had a selection of cloning softwares. Now we can come up here and use this one called Clonezilla. Right there it is. Bring it in. It's a Linux Mint system package, so it seems to be okay. It seems to think our software manager thinks that that would be an okay way to do it. Or we can also, oh, by the way, while we're there, you can also do, I think, free file sync. And we can use a similar program that you can get off of the system right there, a very similar way. It was that free file sync that we saw in Windows. It's available in both copies. You can do it either which way that we backed up our drive with. If I can run the mouse here. There it is. There's free file sync. So we could use that in the same way that we did the other one. Let's see if it pull up. You see, recognize this? All right, so we could do that the same way on our RAID, keeping it backed up so we don't really have to do a lot there. But I think what we're going to do is go to the terminal and kind of do some stuff the hard way. It's really not that hard, but people would consider it the hard way, right? So one of the things I want to do is I want to check out the system to see what drives I have installed. Well, let's go ahead and log in as we start as a super user, okay, because we're going to be working down low level on the drives, and so we want to do a sudo su super user. It's going to ask me for a password. All right, so we're logged in as a super user, and we are going to do like just a list block, because we're going to do a block read, block writes. So this is ls blk, because again, computer people are not the most interesting people sometimes, most imaginative. Like I showed you all ago, I named all my hard drives under the hardware that they actually were. Now here's where we want to then look at our old hardware. Now, let me get it on camera. All right, because if you remember from the previous videos of this year, I think I did one in there. I said, did you recognize my mistake? Because I put one of the RAID drives in 4's position, or NVMe 4. It was actually called M.2-4 or whatever it was, the 4th one, because you can't use the card slot and that one because there's 4 lanes there. The 4 lanes are actually can go to either the M.2 slot or the PCIe 2 slot. That's what that shows here. And let me go ahead and bring that up so we can take a look at that. So what is it telling us that we have? Well, we can tell by the size. We can get a little bit of a hint just reading off of this. And this, all we did was a list block, right? So we know that we have our SR0 and NVMe's. We do not see our SD, our drive, our hard drive, because we pulled it out to make sure we didn't step on it. Else it would show up there. But there's something else that we can do here. We can do a LSBLK list block devices, and I believe it's just a tick and a F. Should give us a more detailed readout, and in fact it does. And I've got as much of this as we could possibly hold. There's our original short version. We're going to pull this up and see, okay, here we are. We're at SR0. So what does it tell us? Well, remember I said when we get to the Linux, it has a different file system, and you've heard me complain that Microsoft is a big enough company. If they wanted to, they could read it, but they don't want to play well, so they just try to make things difficult, in my humble opinion. Now, what do we see here? This is the drive we're booted off of, which is NVMe N5. It's off of partition 1, which is a FAT32. That just gets us booted. And then we actually have the ext4, which is the type of format that Linux uses. This is the one that Windows will not read without some additional drivers being installed. So here we have that on that drive. Now it's called, in this case, it's called that 5 because we're not on 4 anymore because of what I just showed you on the layout. Now here's NVMe 4. We have 2 partitions, right? We have the basic one that Windows will use. Each one of these will be the same. This one, and this one are our RAID drives, if I'm not terribly mistaken. And then as we go down here a little bit further, we see that we have the Windows 11 Pro. That's on the 705. And we know that that's actually the 705 because I pulled the spinning disk, the Toshiba, out. So this one right there, NVMe 1, is actually in that position. That's the Gen 5. Here they're calling this one, for some reason, is installed it as 0. These things do move around a little bit in the system. Is the Windows 5, and of course there is a recovery partition with it. Now, a different way we can look some information up with Linux Mint is to come down to the Linux Mint menu. This would not be the same if you had Arch or something else. This is specific to Linux Mint at this point in time, as far as I know. We would come up, bring the menu up, and we're going to look for preferences. You see we're down here, preferences, and then we're going to pull up disks. And it's going to identify what our system is mounted with. We are currently mounted with these right here. This is our 1 terabyte hard drive. We got 199.8 and then a little bit of a startup gigabyte block device. Both of these are, as you notice, are in fact block device. We have dev vg mint /root and then the swap over here. And of course, then we have our other drives, our terabyte Corsair. That's our Gen 10. That is our Gen 4 for Windows 10. The 4 terabyte, which is where our Windows lives. And you see, we have those partitions, and we can verify that. In fact, we do have 3.3 terabytes free space on that drive. And of course, there's one black, and one black. That's our RAID, which will not be readable except by Windows 11. Windows 10 can't even read this. When I do the optional boot and bring up Windows 10, they can't read the RAID either. And when I end up fixing the file sharing on Linux, Windows is not going to be able to read that directly from that without doing a file share. I can see it externally because we're going to file share it. But as far as the drives, it depends on how we actually format those up. And that is a different video. So there we have our CT. That is our disk right there. And it's got the Linux Mint right there, if I'm not terribly mistaken. This is our 1 terabyte. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it. That's our drive. That's our drive we're going to copy. It's going to be this one right there. It's just these are the mounted portions of that physical 310 that we're actually using for Linux Mint. Now we can do it with a block move. We can try that. If that doesn't work, we can use Clonezilla. Either which way. As I remind us, we pulled out our Toshiba drive just to make sure that we can't mess up our copy unless that drive fails when we do this. So I think we're safe there. Well, are you ready to watch a grown man cry? Because I have not used disk defiler, drive destroyer, with NVMe. Now, the standard way with a standard disk, we would use a different command, but since I've not done this, I think we need to put our NVMe instead of our disk drive. All right, so we're going to give that a try. So our command is going to be sudo, because, whoops, not showing up on the terminal. sudo, right? Then we're going to have our disk defiler right there. And now we have to put our input file. That's going to be our Linux. And I have it pulled up right here, so I'm not going to be confused. And it's going to be, right? It's going to be equals / exactly what we see right here. We're going to leave the partitions off, the P numbers off, but we're going to call it equals. Go back to it didn't catch my equals. There's my equals / dev / NVMe 5 in 1. Thing is, I do have a space right there at no error, so that may be what's causing this invalid conversion. The alternative is we can do it without the conversion equals command, and we'll just sync up afterwards, because remember, again, this is a running operating system. Let's cross your fingers, see if it works. Well, it does appear to be doing something. Let's hope we got our right direction. All right, because remember, we are going to, from 5 in 1, right, to 1 in 1. We're a learning experience. Now, because we're going from a 1 terabyte to a 4 terabyte, when we get done, we should have some empty space on the drive that we need to do a G-parted with to part that. And I'll probably partition that upper unused space as a NTFS, so that I can use that drive for other with other operating systems, because Windows will be able to see NTFS. Actually, it stands for New Technology File System, which was back from the 90s, 98, 97, something like that. Anyway, yeah, a little bit nervous. I don't know what I did wrong. I guess I got extra space in there. I thought I had it right. See, that's the reason we take our little notes when we do stuff, so that we don't look like idiots on camera. All right, we'll see you in a little bit. Well, we got it done. It says it was fine. Let's check our records in and our records out. It doesn't, let's see, it does look like it's a little different. It does look like we have a discrepancy right here. So we should be good. We'll give it some time to do the syncing. Let's go ahead and pull up our preferences in our disk and see what shows up now. Well, that looks good. We do still have our 4 terabyte drive there. Let's pull up G-parted and see what we get. This unused space here on our drive, not this one. We're going to have to go find our drive. There it is. Right. So we have now duplicated our 1 terabyte here. We can set this one up at this point and format it. Before we format it, we have to then initialize it or partition it, and we can partition it into multiple drives or just one. Well, I think I'm just going to leave it as one big data drive, and we can span it, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can, there we go. So we can span it partially or the total system, and I think we're just going to do that. It says file system. Before we do file system, I think I want to do NTFS. Do you see it? There it is. NTFS. That way we know that Linux can see it, NTFS, and we know that Windows can see it. So we'll both be able to use this drive on our system. Let's hit there. All right, so it should be set up. It's partitioned NTFS. So now we should have our system built. We're here again, and we see now from our boot menu that we do have a Windows Boot Manager, which is the Windows 10 here, the MP600. The Ubuntu is now on the T705. We've already booted it, and we have the Windows Boot Manager on the M.2.4 or the P310. So we have what we're looking for here. Let's see if it will actually boot. Because sometimes, we have surprises. Voila, we're alive. Let's see, it's alive. It's alive. Well, what do you know? Here we are. So let's go look at our little directory. All right. Well, there we are. It says WinPro 310C, so it has to have worked. All right. Let's see what the properties are on that one. It says it is 423 gigabyte space for the OS. That should be plenty. And then data, which should be the rest of that 1 terabyte drive. Let's see what they got. Properties. Ooh, not having much information on it. That's fine. But we should be able to, when we reboot, we should be able to see this drive. All three operating systems should be able to see this little cache space here, this little drive that we had here. We have Win 10 Home. We obviously have it. It shows up. Let's see if we've got properties on it. Yeah, it's a little smaller drive, looks like. What do I got on it? Ooh, 242 gigabytes, just enough for the operating system. The rest of that 600's got to be for the data. Let's check it out. Yep. 688 gigabytes. Of course, we can change the proportions of those. And there's the RAID. How about it? All of our old file information that we had on the other drive is now still showing up because we've maintained that. Now, the way I see this going on, we took it off of the Gen 5, put it on the old Toshiba, took it off of the old Toshiba and put it back on the 310, the P310, after we moved the Linux from the 310 to the high-speed drive. Now let's see if we can get this sucker to boot one more time and see if we can actually see that drive. What do you say? See what we got, see if we can see that one drive. And we have our Win 11 on our 310. We have our Win 10 on our 600. We have this common data. How do you like that? Got a common data area on that high-speed drive. That's a huge space right there. Properties. Let's see if it gives us. Yep, there we go. 3 terabytes free. That is a huge area that everybody can reach. All three can reach. Data on the 310. We got that too. That used to be what was there. Now we got this data on the 600. We can see everything from the Linux Mint. Now, everything but the RAID. Now, what are we going to do about that? Well, looking at my runtime, I've got stuff I can go in there and try to cut out and speed it up and that kind of thing if I can do that without wasting too much space. But we can move the file sharing. A Linux machine can file share to a network with other devices on it. So I think I'll go ahead and move that on a different day. We've got it. Remember, we got it on the little hard drive. And remember. It's very unusual for a process like this, in my experience, that something doesn't go wrong. Especially when we're using our little Irens boot CD that I made, which is a thumb drive. I tried to show you a variety of the programs. Maybe some will work for you. Maybe they'll give you a fit, whatever. Remember, you must have BitLocker. Gosh, I hate that mess. BitLocker is a digital encryption of the drive, and it unlocks the drive for you to see it. But we could lock the drive with a password in the BIOS. We don't need that. But it actually encrypts the data, and if you lose your key you are just hosed, unless, of course, you signed up for a Microsoft account, which gives them all kind of privileges, do whatever they want. But then Microsoft will then save your key for that hard drive with them. But if you try to image anything that's been encrypted, it's going to be a bad day for you. It's just going to be a bad day. So anyway, we've got it all up and running with the exception of the RAID, which, of course, we can see it just like we could before. It's just we're either going to have to leave the system running in Windows 11 all the time to kick from any of the other computers, or we're going to have to go ahead and convert the RAID over. Now, I know I'm beating a dead horse, but when we had Mr. Toshiba out here, I know it made the video longer, but we actually, once we thought we had a good copy, a good clone from the Gen 5 705, I want to verify we could actually boot that spinning disk, the CD. So that's great. It worked. And then we had the ability then to see the RAID, because the RAID was working off that same operating system, that same clone would show up. But then before we actually got the final move back to the P310, we want to make sure that everything else was working, and we did want to make sure that we got our Linux Mint moved over using our disruptor. I called it a destroyer. I called it a disk destroyer. I'm not sure what DD is, but anyway, that device worked so much easier, and it was fast compared to the Windows versions, and we didn't have to do all that repeated booting up and thing, but we did stretch everything out. Everything's good. We'll see you probably next week, all right?